The British Empire, a vast and powerful entity that once spanned the globe, had humble beginnings. In the late 16th century, England, inspired by the voyages of explorers like Sir Francis Drake, sought its fortune overseas. Early expeditions were driven by the lucrative spice trade with the East. English merchants, eager to challenge Portuguese dominance, ventured into uncharted waters. These voyages, fraught with risk and uncertainty, laid the foundation for what would become a global empire. Trading posts were established along the coasts of India and Southeast Asia, marking the first footprints of British influence in the East. These early outposts were not about conquest yet. They were primarily concerned with securing trading rights and establishing commercial relationships with local rulers. The focus was on profit, with pepper, silk and tea being highly sought-after commodities. However, the seeds of empire were sown as these trading posts gradually expanded their influence. The East India Company, chartered in 1600, would become the driving force behind British expansion in the East. The East India Company, initially a group of London merchants, rose to become a formidable force in the East. Granted a royal charter by Queen Elizabeth I, the company had a monopoly on trade with the East Indies. This charter granted them significant power, including the right to raise armies and mint coins. Over time, the East India Company evolved from a purely commercial entity into a quasi-governmental power. It established its own army, consisting of both British troops and local sepoys to protect its interests. The company's growing military might allowed it to intervene in local disputes and assert its dominance. The Mughal Empire, once a powerful force in India, was in decline, creating a power vacuum that the East India Company was quick to exploit. Through a combination of shrewd diplomacy and military force, the company expanded its control over vast swathes of territory in India. The Battle of Plassey, fought in 1757, marked a turning point in the history of British India. The East India Company's forces, led by the ambitious and ruthless Robert Clive, faced the much larger army of Siraj-ud-Dowlah, the Nawab of Bengal. Despite being outnumbered, Clive's superior tactics and the betrayal of several of the Nawab's key generals led to a decisive British victory. This unexpected triumph had far-reaching consequences. The Battle of Plassey established the East India Company as the dominant power in Bengal, a region renowned for its wealth and resources. It also marked the beginning of the company's transformation from a trading company into a territorial power. The vast revenues generated from Bengal filled the company's coffers and fueled its further expansion. Following the Sepoy Rebellion of 1857, also known as the Indian Mutiny, the British Crown assumed direct control over India. This marked the beginning of the British Raj, a period of direct British rule that would last for nearly a century. India, with its vast population and abundant resources, became known as the jewel in the crown of the British Empire. The British implemented a system of administration and governance designed to maintain their control and extract wealth from India. The British Raj was a period of significant social, economic and political change in India. The British introduced modern education, infrastructure and legal systems, but often with the aim of serving their own interests. Indian industries were suppressed to protect British manufacturing, leading to widespread poverty and resentment. Nationalist sentiments began to emerge, laying the groundwork for India's eventual independence movement. Section 5. The Victorian Era. Expansion and Consolidation. The Victorian era, which coincided with the reign of Queen Victoria from 1837 to 1901, was a period of significant expansion and consolidation for the British Empire. Driven by a sense of imperial ambition and the belief in their own cultural superiority, the British extended their reach across the globe. They acquired new colonies in Africa, Asia, and the Pacific, often through military conquest and political maneuvering. The British Empire, at its peak, covered nearly a quarter of the Earth's land surface and ruled over millions of subjects. This vast empire was held together by a complex network of trade, administration, and military power. The British justified their rule with the ideology of the civilizing mission, arguing that they were bringing progress and enlightenment to the world. However, this paternalistic approach masked the often brutal realities of colonial exploitation. Section 6. The seeds of decline, nationalism and resistance. The seeds of the British Empire's decline were sown even as it reached its zenith. Across the colonies, nationalist movements emerged, challenging the legitimacy of British rule. People who had once been subjects began to demand self-determination and an end to foreign domination. The First World War, which drained Britain's resources and manpower, further weakened its ability to maintain its vast empire. In India, Mahatma Gandhi's non-violent resistance movement gained momentum, inspiring millions to fight for independence. The Indian National Congress, founded in 1885, became a powerful voice for self-rule. The British government, faced with mounting pressure and the changing realities of the post-war world, began to consider the possibility of granting independence to its colonies. Section 7. The fall of the empire, decolonization and independence. The decades following the World War II witnessed the rapid dismantling of the British Empire. The process of decolonization, driven by a combination of internal and external pressures, led to the granting of independence to India, Pakistan, Burma, Ceylon and many African colonies. The British, weakened by war and facing economic challenges, were no longer able to maintain their grip on their vast empire. The transition to independence was often turbulent, marked by violence, partition and political instability. The legacy of colonialism, with its artificial borders and economic exploitation, continued to cast a long shadow over the newly independent nations. However, the end of empire also marked a new era of self-determination and the emergence of a multipolar world. Section 8. Legacies of Empire, a complex and contested history. The British Empire left an indelible mark on the world, shaping the political, economic and cultural landscapes of many countries. Its legacy is complex and contested, a mixture of positive and negative consequences. On the one hand, the British introduced modern infrastructure, education systems and legal frameworks to many parts of the world. They also left behind a legacy of English language, literature and institutions that continue to influence global culture. On the other hand, the British Empire was built on exploitation, racism and the suppression of local cultures. The economic policies of the empire often benefited Britain at the expense of its colonies, leaving a legacy of underdevelopment and inequality. The violence and displacement associated with colonial rule continue to haunt many former colonies. Section 9. The East India Company's shadow enduring influences. The East India Company, though dissolved in 1858, left a lasting impact on India and the world. It played a pivotal role in shaping the course of Indian history, transforming from a trading company into a colonial power. The company's legacy is intertwined with the British Empire, but it also had its own distinct influence. The East India Company's pursuit of profit and its ruthless exploitation of India's resources left a lasting impact on the country's economy. Its policies contributed to the impoverishment of millions and the destruction of traditional industries. However, the company also left behind a legacy of trade, infrastructure and cultural exchange that continues to shape India today.